Shin walked home in the late afternoon. Mizu laughed brightly at his side. She had just finished recounting an amusing story from class. Shin wasn't paying attention, but was mesmerized by Mizu's joyful expression. They held hands naturally, like a perfect couple. He still found it hard to believe Mizu, the most popular girl, was actually dating him. At first, he thought her confession was just a joke, but her sincerity had convinced him to say yes. His life since then felt like a series of small wonders. Secret smiles across the classroom, sweet good morning texts, and little surprises like homemade cookies she quietly placed in his bag. Even mundane moments, just walking home together, felt special because of her. Mizu's presence brightened his days. He would sometimes catch classmates sneaking envious glances at them, but he just felt lucky. But lately, Mizu's smiles had grown forced. Deep down, she knew she had no right to feel jealous. Shin was genuinely kind, the type who treated everyone warmly. Naturally, other girls adored him. Still, Mizu couldn't shake the insecurity tightening painfully in her chest, especially whenever she saw Shin smiling so comfortably around Hina, his childhood friend. She couldn't bear the thought of losing him, and desperately needed proof that his heart belonged only to her. She'd devised a plan, a small, selfish test. She hated herself a bit for resorting to it, but if it succeeded, maybe the insecurities haunting her would finally disappear. Shin noticed none of her inner turmoil. They stopped briefly at Mizu's gate. Normally she would linger for a gentle goodbye, but today she quickly pulled her hand away. Before Shin could say a word, Mizu disappeared inside. He shrugged, assuming she was just busy. He had no idea his peaceful days were about to shatter. The next few weeks passed quickly with tests and school activities. Mizu kept thinking about her plan. She became quiet sometimes. Shin tried not to worry too much about her distraction. He knew she was popular, and probably busy with others seeking her attention. Still, the less she talked, the more worried he became, noticing her quiet sighs and distant looks. As Shin left the classroom with Mizu that evening, he noticed Yuri Kurose leaning against a window with earphones on. A couple of classmates whispered, "Isn't that Yuri? I heard she got into a fight last year. She's trouble. Best to avoid her." Shin cast a glance at Yuri's bored expression. He had never spoken to her. Their circles were miles apart. On Friday, when the final bell rang, students grabbed their bags to head home. Shin stayed behind to clean the blackboard as part of his classroom duty. By the time he finished, most students had already left. Stepping into the school courtyard, Shin headed toward the big Zelkova tree, a spot that held happy memories. He and Mizu had chosen it as a meeting place after classes. Maybe they would talk about dinner plans or pick a place to eat crepes. But as he turned a corner, he spotted a boy, Daiichi, standing beneath the tree, and Mizu was there, facing him. He hardly knew the guy, only recognizing him as a fellow first year from a different class. There was something in Daiichi's posture that set Shin on edge. The boy held a pink envelope, extending it toward Mizu. Mizu's hand flew to her mouth, as though she was surprised or embarrassed. Shin stopped, feeling a prickle of dread. He saw Mizu fiddling with a strand of her long hair, an unconscious habit she had whenever she felt nervous. Daiichi said something. Mizu responded with a nod, still looking flustered. Hesitantly, she reached out to take the pink envelope. Shin felt a surge of panic. She's accepting it? In that instant, Mizu glanced around, and her eyes found Shin. For a moment, she froze. Her lips twitched into a small, playful smirk, one that Shin interpreted as her being pleased about receiving another boy's confession. But suddenly, Daiichi gave her a hug. Seeing that, he felt like the ground disappeared beneath him. In truth, Mizu's expression was just a brief act meant to make Shin jealous. But Shin saw it as Mizu happily accepting someone else's confession. Unable to bear it, he stepped forward stiffly. When Mizu caught sight of him, her eyes widened with a mixture of surprise and something like regret. But Shin was hurting too much to notice anything else. "I'm sorry I wasn't good enough," he said. His tone was laced with bitterness, but also heartbreak. She opened her mouth to explain, but he could only imagine the worst. Spinning on his heel, he ran away, ignoring her calls. He didn't stop until he was far from school, tears stinging his eyes. Back under the Zelkova tree, Mizu stood stunned, holding an envelope that suddenly felt heavier now. Daiichi, also uneasy. "Mizu, are you all right?" he asked. "Thanks, but I have to go." She barely remembered Daiichi's response as she hurried out of the courtyard. The plan was supposed to be that Shin would stride up, perhaps demand to know what Daiichi was doing, and confirm that Mizu was his girlfriend. The whole situation was just meant to make him jealous, to make him feel what she felt whenever he talked to other girls, so he would treasure her, and only her. But instead, she'd witnessed a look of betrayal in his eyes so profound, it left her breathless. The empty envelope crumpled in her fist. In the end, Mizu stumbled into an empty washroom, slumping against the door. Her reflection in the mirror mocked her. Pathetic. Stupid, she hissed. That night, Mizu stared at her phone, sending text after text to Shin. Meanwhile, he lay on his bed, the phone switched off. He cried until he had no tears left, eventually falling into an uneasy sleep. The weekend was torture for both of them. Mizu sent frantic messages, tried calling, but Shin never picked up. She debated visiting his home, but fear of rejection paralyzed her. Shin spent the weekend isolated in his room, ignoring the outside world. His mother knocked gently at times, but he claimed he was tired and needed rest. Monday morning arrived. Shin decided to drag himself to school. He wished he could skip, but he had neither a valid excuse nor the emotional energy to lie. When he finally opened the door to Class 1B, the room fell silent. Everyone turned to stare. Usually, Mizu would have greeted him with a smile. Today, she was seated near the window, surrounded by a few friends. Her eyes were red-rimmed, a testament to a weekend spent crying. Their gazes locked for a second, a fragile, painful moment. Then Shin dropped his eyes and hurried to his desk. The hush lifted, replaced by whispers. Shin picked up snippets. He broke up with her just like that. I thought she was so good to him, and he just left her. What a jerk. He gritted his teeth. So they think I dumped her, or that I'm the villain. He stared at his blank notebook, trying to block out the murmurs. Over the next hour, the rumors intensified. There was a twisted story that Shin got bored and left her without reason. Some claimed he was two-timing with Hina or other girls. Mizu heard these false stories too, but she didn't correct them. She reasoned that if she confessed the envelope had been empty, she'd be branded a manipulator. That possibility scared her, so she remained mostly silent, tears occasionally brimming in her eyes, and her friends assumed Shin was to blame. The days that followed were a haze of stress. Shin found himself the target of dirty looks. Mizu's popularity meant she had an extensive network of friends and admirers. Many rushed to comfort her, painting Shin as the heartless boy who had trampled on her affection. By the week's end, rumors had grown into monstrous versions of the truth. Someone claimed they heard Mizu crying and saw bruises on her arm. Soon, people were saying Shin had physically hurt her. He felt shocked and angry, but whenever he tried to speak, no words came. The lie about him hurting Mizu had spread too far. Arguing would only make it worse. Hina saw Shin in the hallway. She opened her mouth, but a friend tugged her arm. Come on, Hina, stay away from him. She hesitated, then let them pull her away. In an attempt to avoid the storm of gossip, Shin started skipping lunch in the classroom. Instead, he found an isolated corner of the school library. Among the quiet shelves, he tried focusing on a textbook or letting the silence calm his troubled mind. It was there, one afternoon, that he met Shiori. She was a second-year student who volunteered as a library assistant. Slim and soft-spoken, Shiori moved gracefully between the shelves, organizing returned books. Shin noticed her a few times, but he carefully avoided drawing attention. One day, however, she approached him where he sat. Is this seat taken? She asked gently. Shin blinked in surprise, awkwardly assuring her it was fine. Shiori slid into the seat opposite him, setting down a novel. For a while, they read in silence. Then after a few minutes, she spoke again. You seem troubled. Is everything all right? Shin's eyes darted to hers. He couldn't read her expression but sensed genuine concern. He lied, saying he was okay. Shiori tilted her head, studying him. I've heard some talk about you. Shin's stomach twisted. He was sure she meant the malicious rumors. It's all lies, he whispered. A moment passed. Then Shiori reached across the table, lightly tapping his arm with her fingertips. I know how easy it is for rumors to spiral out of control. I don't believe everything I hear. Her gentle words weakened Shin's defenses. He nodded slightly, tears forming without knowing why. He quietly thanked her. That brief interaction felt like a lifeline, someone who might see him as he truly was. But the relief didn't last long. A week later, Shin was looking for an English book when he noticed a thick volume wobbling dangerously on a high shelf. Nearby, Shiori was shelving books, completely unaware. He glanced up and realized that the large book could slip off at any moment, right onto her head. Shiori, watch out, he called, lunging forward to catch the book or push her out of the way. But in his haste, his foot caught on a low stool. Shiori turned at the sound of his shout. Before either of them could react, Shin stumbled into her, sending both crashing to the carpeted floor. He landed partly on top of her, stunned by the impact. For a few heartbeats, neither moved. Then Shiori gasped, cheeks flushed with embarrassment. Her clothes slipped a bit. She scrambled to fix them, turning away in mortification. Shin's face burned, and he quickly began to apologize. But at that exact moment, a group of girls rounded the corner of the shelves. Miko, another library volunteer, and two friends. They froze at the sight, Shin on the ground with the flustered Shiori. Miko's eyes flashed with protective anger. Shiori, are you okay? She demanded, rushing forward to help her stand. Shin stood too, raising his hands in a helpless gesture. It's not what it looks like. I tripped. Sure you did, one of the other girls muttered darkly. Miko glared at him, her voice cold. I warned you, Shiori. Told you not to hang around him. She turned her scowl onto Shin. First Mizu, now this? You really are? She didn't finish, but he could guess the words. A predator, a creep, a pervert. His heart sank. Miko placed a protective arm around Shiori, urging her to leave. Shiori remained quiet as she was led away, not even attempting to explain. Did even Shiori actually believe he had done it on purpose? He felt a sickening sense of déjà vu. No one will believe me if I say it was an accident, he thought. And soon, new rumors sprouted. Shin had assaulted Shiori. He was a harasser, a deviant who attacked girls in secluded areas. Teachers began watching him more closely. Misa, his homeroom teacher, pulled him aside to caution him about inappropriate behavior. Shin insisted it was an accident, but he could see the doubt in her eyes. No official complaint had been filed, so Misa was reluctant to take disciplinary action, yet she warned him sternly to be careful. Shin left her desk feeling hollow. He noticed a subtle shift in how classmates angled their desks away from him, how they leaned back as if he carried a contagious disease. Any hope he'd had of restoring his good name died. Shin's isolation soon reached a point where no one wanted to be near him. If a teacher paired him with a girl, she would sit stiffly, refusing to look at him. He missed his childhood friend Hina most of all. She had been someone he could always lean on, but the rumors spooked her. She'd grown distant, avoiding direct contact whenever possible. One lunchtime, he tried to talk to her, begging her to believe him. She only shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. "I'm sorry," before running away. Alone, Hina pressed her forehead against the bathroom mirror. Shin's voice echoed in her memory. "You believe them too?" She hadn't, but when her friend hissed, "Stay away from him. He's dangerous," she nodded, cowardice bitter on her tongue. Now, watching him eat alone in the courtyard, she gripped the sink. "I'm sorry," she whispered to herself. At lunch, with nowhere else to go, Shin retreated behind the old gym, seeking solitude. To his surprise, he found Yuri sitting on the concrete steps, chewing gum. She wore her usual jacket and stared up at the sky. He froze, considering walking away, but she spoke without looking at him. "Running from rumors?" Shin looked startled. She turned, her gaze sharp but not unkind. "I've got ears. People won't stop yapping about you." Shin laughed bitterly, asking if she believed the rumors too. Yuri blew a bubble with her gum, then popped it. She said that rumors were lies until proven true. She tapped a small scar on her knuckle. "They do the same about me, calling me a delinquent or something. They don't know anything. Well, whatever helps them sleep." A beat of silence passed. Finally, Shin mumbled it was the same for him too. She nodded, then let him choke on their lies. "You do you." Shin wasn't sure how to respond. He hesitated, then sat down, sharing a quiet understanding with the one person who knew what it felt like to be the target of rumors. The effect rippled into his home life too. His mother noticed he was quieter, returning home looking exhausted. Whenever she asked if something was wrong, he forced a grin and lied. "I'm fine, just tired." It pained her to see her son so withdrawn, yet without concrete details, she could only continue to show gentle support. However, Shin's sister Emmy was in the same school. Initially, she had heard the rumors and believed them, furious and humiliated that her younger brother was being called a pervert. She avoided him at school, refusing to be seen near him. One evening, after hearing vicious gossip from a friend, Emmy confronted Shin at home with a mixture of anger and embarrassment. "How could you do this to Mizu?" she demanded. "Don't you know how people look at me now? They pity me for having a brother like you." He'd stood there, not bothering to argue. "I'm sorry." She stared, then huffed and walked away. Each day felt like slow suffocation. Shin found solace only in his studies. If he kept his head in a book, he could pretend he was just another student focusing on grades. His efforts soon translated into top marks, earning reluctant praise from teachers. But it didn't win him any friends. If anything, his academic success gave fresh fodder to the rumor mill. "He thinks he's too good for everyone," some said. Weeks turned into months, and rumors faded beneath new gossip. But one person was left behind, still hurting: Shin. By the time winter approached, he was a ghost in the hallways. His existence was overshadowed by the student life, which carried on regardless. His only consolation was that soon he would advance to the next year, and just maybe, he could start fresh. When the second year began, Shin was placed in Class 2C with new classmates and teachers. To his surprise, Yuri Kurose sat a few rows behind him, slouched in her seat. Their eyes met briefly on the first day. She gave him a curt nod. After a slight hesitation, Shin nodded back quietly. Because of dedicating all his time on studies last year, he was now the top-ranked student and had earned a certain aura of mystique, the brilliant but aloof boy. Many of the new first years saw him as a kind of legend, the handsome, quiet top student who never socialized. Some admired him, others found him intimidating. In the absence of rumors, a subtle idolization began to form around him. Some girls whispered that he was too cool to date anyone, while others romanticized his distance as a sign of hidden depth. None of them knew the truth, that he was simply terrified. Every time he heard giggles from a group of girls, his mind conjured images of more rumors, more accusations. He lived in constant fear of any interaction that might be misconstrued. One day, he found a small package on his desk, homemade cookies tied with a ribbon. Uncertain, he looked around. A shy girl named Mayu peeked at him, then quickly looked away when their eyes met. Some of her friends whispered excitedly, their gazes flicking in his direction. But for Shin, he didn't feel flattered. He felt cornered. He imagined the cookies might be poisoned or spiked with something humiliating. Paranoia told him it was another trap, so he pocketed them and later threw them in the trash behind the gym. It was a grim routine. Letters in his locker, sweets on his desk, quiet giggles from admirers who misread his fear as cool aloofness. Shin ignored every gesture. One particular afternoon, Shin discovered a pink note slipped into his desk. "Please meet me behind the old gym after class. I need to tell you something. M." He stared at it. Another potential disaster. If he ignored it, she might seek him out in front of others. In panic, Shin quickly carried out his plan. After that, he gathers his belongings and prepares to go. Meanwhile, behind the gym, a girl is standing alone. It was Akari, the girl who sat beside him in class, obviously waiting for him. Akari, hearing footsteps, turned quickly, face aflame with courage or desperation, and blurted, "I love you, Shin. Please go out with me." But when she realized it was Mr. Kawamura in front of her, she shrank back, mortified. The teacher was speechless. Akari burst into tears, dropping the note as she fled. From an upstairs window, Shin watched silently. Knowing the teacher had handled the situation, he turned away, feeling safe to leave now. Summer was in full swing when Shin settled into a quiet, lonely routine. He woke early, arrived at school before the crowds, studied alone, and left as soon as classes ended. He rarely stayed longer than necessary, but fate had a cruel sense of timing. One afternoon, Shin was tasked with delivering a stack of printouts to the teacher's lounge. On his way back, he turned a corner near the science lab and came face to face with Mizu. He froze. She looked the same in many ways. Slender, with long black hair, yet something in her gaze seemed different, maybe sadness or regret. She was in a different class this year, so they no longer saw each other daily. For a moment, neither spoke. The hallway was otherwise empty. Mizu's lips parted, and she raised a hand in a small wave. "Hi, Shin," she said softly, as though greeting an old friend. He felt a tightness in his chest. Memories rushed back. Her laughter during their walks, the sparkle in her eyes when she teased him, the warmth of her hand, and that painful moment beneath the Zelkova tree. It was too much. He stepped back. Mizu's face fell and she reached out as if to stop him. "Shin, wait." He flinched. The idea of her touching him now felt too painful. I need to go," he said with a trembling voice. Without waiting for her reply, he stepped past her and hurried down the corridor, leaving her behind. He heard his name echo off the walls, but he kept running until he found solace in an empty stretch of hallway. Leaning against the wall, he squeezed his eyes shut, yet no tears came this time. He had cried enough for Mizu already. Mizu remained frozen in place. Seeing Shin up close again for the first time in so long left her dizzy with emotion. She had thought she was prepared. She had rehearsed over and over how she would apologize, even a scenario where they awkwardly became friends again, if nothing else. But reality was harsh. All she managed was a weak "hi," and he bolted. She ducked into the nearest restroom, waiting until the tears subsided before checking her appearance in the mirror. At times, she had tried to correct small rumors, telling people that Shin wasn't actually cruel or violent, but her half-hearted attempts never overcame the momentum of gossip. She had lost the chance to rectify the biggest lie, that she had never received a real love letter from Daiichi. Washing her face at the sink, Mizu whispered, "I'm sorry, Shin," to her reflection. But deep down, she knew words weren't enough. She had to fix things herself. Meanwhile, Shin faced another issue in his second year. He had noticed some creepy behavior around him, feeling as if someone was secretly following him. One morning, their homeroom teacher, Ms. Sato, asked them to pair up for a group assignment. He felt a surge of dread. He always hated forced partner work. "Shin, you'll be with Akari," Ms. Sato said, scanning the chart. It was the same Akari, the girl he had been trying to avoid. As he reluctantly inched his desk closer, her intense gaze fixed on him unblinkingly. They worked in silence for a while. But when Shin's pen ran dry, he quietly muttered a curse under his breath. Akari immediately offered her own pen, her voice breathy with nerves. "Here, Shin, you can use mine." Momentarily stunned, he replied, "Thank you." A fleeting smile crossed her lips. After that, she seemed to focus intently on her notes, occasionally sneaking glances at him. When the bell rang for lunch, Shin handed back the pen, thanking her again. Akari took it gingerly. For a heartbeat, her lips grazed the cap, then the pen slid into her pencil case as if nothing had happened. Had he imagined it? Shin felt a sudden chill. Mumbling an excuse about needing a book, he quickly left the classroom. The next morning, Shin sat quietly at the back of the classroom during lunch, head down in a book, when loud laughter rang out. 3 girls stood near the window, talking in mean voices. "Did you hear? Yuri Kurosi sells herself after school," one sneered. "My cousin saw her taking cash from some old guy near the station." Another giggled. "No wonder she's always dressed like trash. Probably can't afford better." Shin tightened his grip on the pen. This felt exactly like what he had gone through in his first year. He told himself to stay out of it, but their words kept clawing. Disgusting. No wonder she is a loner. She's just a... The chair screeched as he stood abruptly, the loud thud silencing the room. He didn't look back as he stormed out, fists clenched, his pulse roaring in his ears. Behind the gym, he found Yuri sitting. She was feeding a scrawny cat. Her face, usually strong and defiant, was marked with tears, eyeliner smudged into dark patches. She stiffened when she saw him, swiping furiously at her cheeks. "The hell do you want?" she snapped. Shin hesitated, then sat a foot away. "I heard them talking. The rumors." Yuri gave a short, bitter laugh. "Since when do you care? Well, go ahead. Ask me about it. Everyone else does." He didn't. Instead, he just stared at her. After a silent moment, she sighed. "I needed money for my mom's hospital bills. Plus, I've got a little sister to take care of, so I took a waitress job at this shady lounge because they paid more. Turns out customers corner you constantly. The manager never stopped customers and told me to shut up if I wanted to get paid. One night, a premium customer cornered me outside after closing, pressing me roughly against the wall. My first instinct was to fight back, but losing the job would doom my family. Instead, I froze, screaming desperately for him to stop. At exactly that moment, a classmate stepped into view. She didn't move to help or ask what was happening. Instead, she gave a small, satisfied smile, calmly took out her phone and snapped a picture. Twisting my humiliation into proof, I was willingly selling myself, or whatever they want to believe. Last year, they called me a delinquent for beating up that guy who followed my sister. Now they say I'm loose too. I guess people only believe what they want to believe." Shin's chest ached. He had seen that look before, the same one he wore in the mirror. Shame, exhaustion. Without thinking, he reached for her hand. She flinched but didn't pull away. "I believe you," he said quietly. "You're better than me. I ran from everything. But you fought back. Stay proud." Her tough girl mask shattered, her tears soaking into the fabric. A strong girl with the heart of gold, he thought. The next day, Shin found himself at the library doors again, though he hadn't truly returned there since the incident with Shiori. He needed a particular literature anthology for an important essay. But as soon as he stepped inside, the memory of that painful misunderstanding came rushing back. He hesitated. He could see a few students quietly studying, and there was Shiori at the librarian's desk, now in her 3rd year. When she looked up and saw him, her eyes widened slightly. He nearly fled again but paused, recalling Yuri's determination. He can't run away forever. He could just grab the anthology from the shelf and leave. Just then, "Shin?" Shiori called softly, setting down her paperwork. She took a couple of steps closer, hands raised as if to show she meant no harm. "Please, can we talk for a moment?" she asked. "I promise I won't take too long." Part of Shin wanted to spin on his heel, but he was tired of running. Nodding stiffly, he followed her to a reading nook near the back. They sat at a table. Shiori took a shaky breath, her voice trembling. "First, I want to apologize properly. About last year when we fell in the library. I knew it was an accident. You tripped trying to warn me about that book, and you weren't," she swallowed. "You weren't doing anything inappropriate." Shin looked down at his hands, remembering how she had avoided him afterward, never defending him publicly. I've admired you since the first time I saw you reading in the library, and I've had feelings for you ever since," Shiori continued, tears running down her face. "But then that accident happened. I was cowardly. I didn't defend you, and I'll never forgive myself for it." Shin stared, shock coiling in his gut, quickly giving way to anger. "So you liked me?" he asked. "Then you left me to be hated by the entire school. You stood by while everyone called me names, a pervert." Shiori pressed her hand to her mouth, muffling a sob. "I'm so sorry. I know I can't undo the damage I caused, but I swear I tried to speak with teachers about clarifying the rumors. They advised me to keep quiet for my sake." Shin stood abruptly, chair scraping the floor. "You were part of the reason I lost all my friends. And now you say you liked me? As if that makes it better?" She produced a letter from another pocket, an official notice from the scholarship committee, saying she was fully confirmed for financial aid until graduation. She pointed to it, voice trembling with self-loathing. "My family is really poor. I was afraid of losing my tuition support." Shin's anger rose. "Congratulations on your scholarship, Shiori. I hope it was worth every ounce of my pain." She broke down, tears spilling freely. He left her there, stepping out of the library, ignoring the startled gazes of a few students who witnessed Shiori's distress. He felt empty and furious at once. Shin spent most of his time trying to bury himself in schoolwork. His mother was worried sick. As for Emi, his younger sister, it was as if she had ceased to exist entirely in Shin's eyes. After the events of the previous year, something inside him had broken completely, sealing his heart shut, especially toward her. One evening, as he finished dinner in silence, his mother asked softly, "Shin, are you sure there's nothing you want to tell me? Anything about school?" He stared at his half-eaten plate. The urge to confess everything welled up, but where would he even start? So he nodded, forcing a small smile. "I'm all right, Mom. Just tired." She looked unconvinced but let it drop. Around midnight, he heard a soft knock at his door. Before he could respond, the door opened, and Emi slipped inside. "Brother, can we talk?" He sat up slowly. He hadn't had a real conversation with his sister in months, ever since she'd hurled accusations at him. Emi clutched her arms defensively. "I know I was horrible to you," she began. "I believed the rumors, I didn't stand by you, and I said awful things. People kept talking about how my brother was this pervert or abuser, and I let it get to me." Shin looked away, unwilling to meet her gaze. She took a hesitant step forward. But I've learned the truth over time. Mom said you barely eat at school, that your teachers said you keep to yourself. A tense silence settled. Finally, Shin spoke. It doesn't matter anymore, Emmy. He turned his head as if to dismiss her. Emmy bit her lip, tears spilling. You can't just ignore me forever. I'm your sister. Please, I'm trying to make amends. His eyes flicked to her, a coldness she'd never seen before. I don't have the energy to fix everything you helped break, he murmured. I told you it doesn't matter. She choked back a sob. Shin, please, leave me alone, he whispered, his tone flat but final. Emmy inhaled sharply, heartbreak flashing across her face. Without another word, she turned and slipped out the door, closing it quietly behind her. Shin stood alone. It was better to spend his time studying than forming bonds only to be dumped later. His heart couldn't handle another betrayal. Weeks passed, and the second semester progressed. Shin did his best to remain invisible. The teachers, however, noticed his outstanding academic record. His homeroom teacher occasionally suggested he join a club or tutor other students, but Shin always politely refused. Still, despite his efforts to keep everyone at a distance, he found himself quietly growing closer to Yuri, exchanging brief conversations in the classroom. During these moments, he occasionally noticed girls staring at them with irritated expressions, especially Mio, whose intense gaze always unsettled him. Even so, Shin couldn't help but feel comforted by Yuri's steady presence. Then, one morning, Ms. Sato gave an unexpected announcement to the class. Everyone, I have wonderful news. Our Class 2C representative for the Student Council President election, Shin Ichikawa, has won the election with majority. Shin felt the blood drain from his face. He'd never signed up for any election. This was some sort of mistake. Yet the entire class erupted in cheers and applause. He glanced at Yuri, a question forming silently in his eyes, but she quickly averted her gaze as if to say, "Don't ask me." A few students even whooped in excitement, as if they'd orchestrated a surprise victory for him. Ms. Sato continued, "Shin, you'll be sworn in at the next assembly. Congratulations. We're all counting on you." Stunned, Shin glanced around as classmates gathered near his desk. One girl proudly explained they'd nominated him because he was the smartest in their year and would never volunteer himself. Another girl quickly added that Shin was exactly what the council needed: efficient, smart, and handsome. Shin sat frozen at his desk, feeling disbelief and suspicion. Why had they picked him? Did they actually believe in him? Or were they just counting on him to handle all the work again? It wouldn't be the first time classmates had dumped extra responsibilities on him. On the day of the inauguration, the entire student body gathered in the auditorium. Nervously, Shin stood on stage. He has no idea what he is doing. The principal's voice boomed through the microphone. Introducing our new student council president, Shin Ichikawa. Let's give him a warm welcome. Polite applause filled the auditorium. Shin stared at the crowd, shaking but forcing himself to nod in acknowledgement. He felt like running off the stage, but it wasn't the right time. Then came the announcement, and our new vice president, Mizu Hayashi. Shin's heart almost stopped. Had he misheard? But sure enough, it was the Mizu he knew. Their eyes met across the stage as she walked toward him. Applause rippled again. Mizu, meeting his gaze, offered a cheerful smile. She extended a trembling hand, softly whispering, "Please, take care of me."